Hey guys, and welcome to Ozzie Reviews, and welcome to August Q&A. So guys, it's been a pretty big month. We've had a lot of different pistol reviews being released, and then some other reviews in between those pistol reviews. So we've got a whole heap of new reviews for September, but let's kick off the month with this month's Q&A. So the first question I got here is from Ian, and he says, Ozzie, I understand a cheap scope, i.e. sub $100, wouldn't compete optically with an expensive model, but is it just as accurate? Would you expect a cheap scope to still hold at zero? Well, mate, I wouldn't. There's two things that really I find go wrong with cheap scopes. Number one is they fail under recoil. So in other words, you'll lose your zero basically once it starts, copping that recoil. And number two is it'll change its point of impact when you actually zoom through the magnification range. So what I mean by that is, say for example, you have a 3:9 scope, and hypothetically you zero a really cheap scope at 9 power, zoom it back to 3 power and then have a shoot with it, and then usually you see a shift. Okay, now they're the two things I really don't like about those cheap scopes, apart from obviously looking through some of them is just terrible. They're just not nice glass to look through at all. So yeah, they're the two things that I look for. And mate, honestly, I wouldn't even go anywhere near a sub $100 scope. There's an old saying about, you put the value of the scope on the rifle on its value. So in other words, if you pay $500 for a rifle, spend $500 on a scope. And usually I stick to that motto. Next question I got here is from Jaden, and it's another scope question. We're getting a fair few this month. So he says, hey Ozzie, just wondering if you have had anything to do with Hawke scopes. If so, what is your opinion? Cheers. Well, mate, I haven't. I can't say that I've actually used them. So anything I say about them would just be, just my personal feelings on them. They are made in China. So, as most people know, I don't like scopes on my own gear made in China or the Philippines, or Taiwan or so forth. I mean, I don't mind Japanese made scopes, completely different story there. But those cheaper Filipino or Chinese made ones, I really don't like. However, I will review them and be completely honest. I mean, if they work for me and they're nice and clear, I'll report exactly as that. But my personal feeling is I just don't like them on my own equipment. Next question I got here is from John. He says, G'day Ozzie, I noticed a couple of guys asking about scopes, so here I am adding to the same line of questioning. Most of us know you're a huge fan of European and Japanese manufactured optics. However, if you were poor, like some of us, and had to choose from an optics vendor that manufactures their scopes in either China, Philippines or Taiwan, who would be the one you would choose and why? I'm interested to hear about your thoughts on budget price entry-level Vortex, Bushnell, Athlon and any other vendors I haven't mentioned, mainly for rimfire rifles. In addition, what features in order of importance do you look for in a budget scope? Cheers, mate, John. Well, mate, absolutely. I mean, I do love the, European or Japanese or American-made stuff. As for, being poor, mate, I've certainly bought scopes on a budget before. I mean, I have my benchmark basically as a loophole scope. That's usually where I'll start from, especially on a rimfire. Absolutely love those VX Freedom rimfires. And I mean, they're about $325. So I don't class them as an expensive scope whatsoever, but the optical clarity out of them and the reliability, I haven't had any problem whatsoever. And I've got 4 of them on 4 of my rimfires, right now actually. So as for the cheaper ones that are specifically made in China, Philippines or, Taiwan, as you say, look, Vortex have a great name. I've never really been, massively impressed by them. I've got a few friends with them, but I've just, never found them to be something that I'd want to purchase for myself. So not saying they're a bad optic, I just have never really gone for them. The Burris and the Bushnell scopes, I have used those. I've reviewed some as well. Very clear. very nice, and I think that really you probably wouldn't go too far wrong with those. What I really look for in a cheap scope is that virtually no questions asked replacement warranty, and most of them can do that because they are a cheap scope and they're making them so cheap that they can afford to just replace them. So that's probably something that I'd really look for in a scope if it was really cheap. As for the more expensive scopes, and they have like a 10-year warranty or 15-year warranty, a 20-year warranty, I've never had to claim on a warranty for like a Schmidt and Bender, Carl's, that sort of stuff. I just never had to do it. So for the cheaper ones, mate, two really important things: obviously the warranty, and take a look through it and make sure it is crystal clear to your eye, because at the end of the day, that makes a massive difference. Next question I got here is from Gavin. He says, since you have your average shot while hunting at 75 to 150 yards, what kind of reticle do you favour for hunting? I'm about to set up a set of ring horseshoe reticles, centre dot at point blank, 0 at 75 to 150 yards. What do you think of the idea of the setup? What scopes would you favour with that style reticle? I have to admit I was enchanted by Bushnell's recent sale of the 1-4 by 24 with a mount and throw lever, and thought they were a great opportunity for proof of concept, and the glass is great, covering the 100 yards easily. Well, mate, look, if it's rimfire, I just go for those VX Freedom ones from Loophole, because they've got those MOA drop compensators. So usually what I work out with that is I'll 0 at 50 yards, and then usually it's about 4 little strokes down, or hash marks as some people like to call it, which is basically 4 MOA down at 100, and I'm right on there with most 22 ammos. So for me, that's what I like using. As for a centerfire, and this is just keeping in mind that 75 for me, 75 to 125, 150 yards tops for hunting. If it's a centerfire caliber, I don't find any real need to go for anything other than just a standard duplex. That's just me personally. If it's out further, I'm doing target shooting, by all means I'll go for something with an MOA reticle on a centerfire, so I can compensate. But mainly for hunting, mate, especially when I was, let's have a look at like Cat C's for the farm here. I've just got red dots. It's the same thing like, on the Ruger SR556, the Ruger SR762, same thing. I just had aim point red dots on both, and that was, ample for shooting out there to those distances. So, I really, mate, I really don't see the point in those sort of reticles. I know a lot of people, like to use them, but usually you're looking at that lower magnification, and it's for game on the run. And let's be honest, mate, like, me personally, I don't have time to bring that rifle up to my shoulder and then go, okay, there's the center point. Oh, there's a little bit of a drop there. Because you're shooting so quickly, you're bringing up to the shoulder, and then you're tracking that game, and then you squeeze the shot off. So that's why, when I look at red dots, a lot of people say, what do I think of EOTech? I don't like EOTech. I don't like the brand in general, and I don't like the reticle of them. I prefer just a single red dot. That's what I like for that faster action hunting and shooting. So, if it's out a little bit further and I've got time to take my shot, then by all means, like a 3 to 9 by 40 scope seems to be the average size, and just a standard duplex, mate, I find that ample for my needs. Not saying it's going to suit you, Gav, but that's all that I use. Next question I got here is from Josh, and he says, "Hi Ozzie, I got a Trijicon Accupoint 3 to 9 by 40 scope on my Ruger American Ranch rifle in 223. I saw your review on them, and you said that you have used them a fair bit. My rifle is just a paddock gun that gets a lot of use and the usual hard treatment of carrying everywhere every day. Would you recommend this scope be used for this purpose, or should I look at a cheaper one? I'm wondering how they hold up and how tough they are. It sure makes the rifle a pleasure to shoot. Thanks, Josh." Mate, you've answered your own question there. Like, why would you go cheaper if you love using that optic? And it is just a fantastic little optic. As I said in the review, I don't think a lot of people are aware of just how crystal clear the glass is, and having that illumination without the need of batteries is just brilliant. It's fantastic. So for me, I wouldn't be going cheaper, especially if you're getting those knocks in the paddocks and things like that. You want a scope that's going to stand up to that. Trijicon has a really good name for that because, let's face it, they make the ACOG, for the US Marine Corps, so they've got to make something that is extremely robust. Now, obviously the Accupoint isn't as reinforced as what those ACOGs are, but it's still made from, tough aircraft grade aluminium. So, yeah, they're not a crap scope, and I'm pretty sure that you'll find that they'll take just general knocks, that you're giving it as a sports shooter or, occupational shooter on your farm or whatever that may be. So the only question I would ask, mate, is, do you need illumination? Because if you don't, then obviously you can drop down, to a cheaper price scope. And you're only going to probably be saving a couple $100 doing it. But have a look at like Leupold VX3i. I really like those scopes as well. Very, very crystal clear. You can obviously get them with illumination, but just a straight like 3 to 9 by 40. So you've got the same as your Trijicon, but personally, mate, I wouldn't change it. You have a brilliant scope in that Trijicon. You've already said it's a pleasure, to use and shoot with. So why change? I definitely wouldn't change at all. Next question I got here is from Garen. He says, "Hi Ozzie, a non-scope question for you. What's your favourite beer and spirit? Or maybe one of each. Cheers, Gary." Well, mate, spirit-wise, vodka man, through and through. I've never ever been a dark spirit drinker, like sort of the whiskies and the rums and things like that. Sure, I've drank it before, but never really sort of warmed to it. Where vodka, always drink that. That may surprise a lot of people. Now, as for beer, mate, Great Northern, is my sort of flavour that I like now. I just enjoy, having one of them around the campfire when friends come over and stuff like that. Just a really nice beer. So, yeah, mate, that's the two favourite drinks for me. Next question I got here is from Patrick, and he says, "Hi Ozzie, hope you're going well. I saw your Facebook page post about the situation at 365 Precision Shooting on how new unfair restrictions have been put on the rifle range. It is a constant chipping away with these arbitrary decisions which are not part of our gun laws. What's your thoughts? Cheers, Pat." Well, mate, this is the thing that I have spoken about for quite some time. Is, if they can't pass something in legislation, so they can't get their anti-gun agenda across the line, then what they'll do is they'll simply change policy. Now, a lot of people think that that is just BS, but it is actually true. Look here in Queensland, for example. Now, a few years ago, weapons licensing went around and changed the range templates to prohibit 338 Lapuas and so forth, okay? Because they couldn't stop people applying for a PTA because it is a Category B firearm in that caliber if it's a, bolt action or, any other type of manually operated action there. So that's what they did to prohibit people. Look at also the Cat H situation for farmers here in Queensland. The legislation doesn't say a minimum property size, and for many, many years they had a recommendation of 500 acres. And then all of a sudden, it's jumped up to 5,000 acres now. But where in the legislation does it say that? But then they use that to then rely on to actually try to deny and reject applications. So this is where I disagree with it all. I don't see why the policy should be treated like legislation, and that's why when people who don't agree with that and they elect to go to QCAT, or in other words court, and sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, but when you win, obviously you have a win because certain things aren't in the legislation. So it's just a shame to see. It doesn't surprise me at all, because that's how they will get around things, because most people have a firearms license for recreational or target shooting, right? So what better way to restrict people than to actually attack it by putting restrictions on the ranges? So then when those people put in for their licenses and PTAs, it's so easy for them to turn around and say, well, I'm sorry, but none of the ranges support that, so therefore you can't have it. So you see what I mean? So they sort of go the backdoor approach in my view. So yeah, I don't agree with it whatsoever. I think the laws are the laws. It's clearly there in the legislation. So if it says that you can have certain things in that legislation, then there should be no argument with it. There should be no red tape, nothing. It's clearly there. So if you're licensed, you should be able to, you know, enjoy whatever firearm under whatever category you're licensed for. So I guess we've sort of gone on a little bit of a tangent there, mate, but you know, that's how I see the whole situation. Next question I got here is from Edward, and he says, "G'day Ozzie, I want to paint one of my Ruger Americans in an olive green. Got one in 22 and in 223. Any recommendations on the best way to do so, or do you reckon it's not a good idea? Cheers, Edward." Well, mate, look, it depends on how professional you want the job done. I mean, you know, you're looking at almost like a multicolour olive green. In other words, do you want one shade of olive green and then another shade, or just straight out? I mean, if you want just straight out and you want it to look really professional, I mean, I would be just getting it Cerakoted by someone who really knows what they're doing, like Jeff at SLR Coatings, you know, here in Brisbane, or somebody else who's really good at applying Cerakote. It'll come out fantastic. You'll have a finish on it for years that's going to, you know, resist obviously rust and all that sort of thing. And you know, really, I don't think they're that expensive to, you know, get firearms Cerakoted when you look at the longevity of it all. Now, if you actually want to do it yourself, mate, you know, there's another product called Duracoat. There's a place, Caswell, Australia, they're down in Victoria. Now, they sell the actual aerosol cans of it. So, you know, you can get that and just spray a firearm yourself. There's like a hardener that they get you to mix with it. And yeah, pretty much simple from there to do. I think roughly you're going to be looking at probably about $100 or so for one of them. So you've really got to weigh it up, you know, spend a couple $100 and get it professionally Cerakoted, or, you know, do it yourself, like just in the backyard or whatever. Then, you know, you're going to be looking at about $100 anyway as a minimum. So you'd really have to make that decision, mate, and make a choice from there which way you want to go. Now, last question we've got for this month is from Rick, and he says, "Hi Ozzie, do you enjoy fishing? And if so, what type? Do you like fresh water or salt water?" Well, mate, I do. Very much so. I like salt water. You know, I grew up as a kid always, you know, doing saltwater fishing with my old man and stuff. And I used to actually do a lot of net fishing, you know, with freshwater fish. So, yeah, I really like nothing better than just going out and getting a good feed of whiting, you know, so salt water. You know, I'd absolutely love it. I don't get to do it as much as I used to, because obviously I live further away from the coast than what I did many years ago. But yeah, I just really enjoy the flavour and the sweetness of whiting. And they're a fun fish to catch as well, you know, because different fish will obviously, you know, nibble on the bait or the lure, you know, just that bit different. You know, they've got their own differences. And I just like the way whiting come up. I enjoy fishing for them. I just think they're a fun fish to catch and eat. So, yeah, that'd be my choice. Although, you know, the freshwater stuff, you know, I really would like to do a lot more of it. And, you know, I'm around some of the greatest areas in Queensland for that. And I really should take advantage of it a bit more. But I'm just sort of, I guess, still stuck on the, you know, the love of saltwater fishing for the time being anyway. All right, guys, so that concludes this month's Q&A. Thank you to all of you guys who submitted the questions. And as always, you know, if you want to become a part of this, guys, you simply just have to be a Patreon supporter or a PayPal donator every month. And you can do that from as little as $1 a month. So it's something for me to give back to you guys and, you know, give you some advice and recommendations so that, you know, hopefully it can save you from making the incorrect decision in the future. Anyhow, guys, hope you enjoyed this month's Q&A. Get ready for September. I got some really great reviews coming out. So keep an eye out for them, and we'll catch you on the next review.